So we're back with part 2, number 5, or episode 15 of Nizi Project Season 2 with boys. We're continuing the second stage group performances. And something that starts from the beginning is that I get really confused about how they arbitrarily use the terms Group B. Because in the last week, they had two teams, and one was Group A and one was Group B. But now, collectively, this whole group that's competing against each other is Group B. And so, that's really confusing. And they don't even refer to the first team or the second team again in Group A, Group B terms now. And so that was really confusing. They just refer to them by team names now. And so, let's just get into it. We're just continuing the performances, and there really isn't much more to this episode. And so, the first team that's up is Team Three Color Dango Heroes. And so that's like, I think it's based on the Three Color snack. And they're singing 2 p.m.s. I think it's When You Hear the Song or something like that. But in their practice, you get their vocal coach criticizing them early on. And here, in my opinion, Sadai's confidence is kind of still shot. And he hasn't learned how to really emotionally express himself with intent yet. Ken here is also the leader for some reason, and I think that's odd because he's kind of guy who just recently turned it around, and obviously he's looking over at the other team and he's intimidated because Tomoya, who's the leader of the other team, has helped him out a lot recently, and so for him, Ken here is struggling as the leader. He doesn't really have all the necessary experience or qualities to be a leader, but his idea of being a leader is basically saying, hey, we're giving you all friendship bracelets, and what we're going to do is work on our team unity, which works out actually for him. It turns out to be a very positive gambit for their team, and you'll find out later why. But basically, what they end up doing is just working on their expressions. Now, personally, I feel like what they're doing here is actually working on their intensity rather than emotions, because they're not talking about it in terms of expressing the meaning of the words. They're when one guy's doing a move, Ken basically says, open your eyes more, do this, right? So he's giving him very specific instructions to increase his intensity so you can see the expressiveness rather than talking about what he's expressing or how he's supposed to express it and why he's supposed to express it. But still, it works out for them. So we get to their performance, and I feel like before the performance started, they looked uncertain and shaky. But when they started performing, I thought they were nailing the emotional delivery right from the start. And overall, I think the performance is okay. When they were dancing in sync, like at these points, that was the only time I thought they were sacrificing emotions a little bit. And so, considering that every time they performed individually, emotions were strong, but they got together in sync, I felt like if you don't have the emotions at that point when you're in sync, then the transitioning between is going to suffer as well. But other than that, I think they did okay. And the only thing I would say is that maybe Sodai, he would get criticism at the end of this, and it's basically because it's hard to read his face sometimes when you're not zooming in. And I think it's just his facial features, not really something that you can really help. And I'm looking at this on a screen, and the screen is not that big, the one I'm looking at it on. And so it might be different in person. And so that's just my take on it. Now you get to JYP's take on them, and he says the performance totally exceeded his expectations. And he says that for this song in particular, it's actually difficult to express emotions in the dance. And so that kind of links up with what I said before. And so what I was seeing before when they were in sync and not really expressing emotions, was that really a product of them not being able to do it? Or was it kind of more, it was a problem with the choreo itself, and it's just a part of the song? But JYP himself says he felt emotion in both their vocals and dance, and could sense unity in their performance. Now, in particularly when he's talking about Ken, he says that Ken was singing much better than expected, and he did it with emotion. He says the same thing about Seita. Seita was doing the exact same thing. And then he talks about Sodai, and the only thing he says is that when Sodai was the one thing that disappointed him is that he wanted Sodai to show something more powerful vocally. And so he wasn't able to showcase his singing ability because of that. But his expressiveness did get better, which kind of counters what I said, because I was just saying I had trouble reading his expressiveness, but it's just because we weren't zoomed in on his face a lot, and I said that before too. But I was actually like surprised to hear that JYP was expecting more from him vocally, and that's why he's kind of being slightly punished. But he says that he didn't want to take risks that would harm the team. Anyways, that is Three Color Dango Heroes. So we get to the next performance, and this is team. This is Team World's Three Greatest Princes, and they're singing 101's Energetic. And so, first thing I realize when I hear this is that I think that's a K-pop song, and there's going to be a language barrier, which is possibly vocal driven, because I don't know, but I feel like I've gleaned information about this by watching Mnet's show about how this might be a song. I think it was put together by a strong vocal performer, but I'm not really sure who that was. I'm kind of forgetting his name right now. But anyways, Tomoya basically starts off this group by setting goals for them to grow. He says he wants them to grow, and he has them doing fundamentals. And so Tomoya here is obviously identifying something that he recognizes as wrong with the group, and I think he's right in his perception. But I feel like when you get into their dance practice, the trainer is saying there is a problem with them not being in sync, and that's just everyone seems to be right, except the practice doesn't seem to be enough. And you see that even Sean knows that no matter how hard he practices, he's having issues with letting everyone down in terms of like not being in sync with them as well. And so Tomoya basically says just believe in our practice and the fine tuning that he helps them make. And then we get to the performance. Now you'll see that everyone identified the problem with this team, and that team is the one that team's issues are the one that JYP continues to identify after their performance. So we get to their performance, and I feel like their sync is good at the start, and the vocal is actually really strong in this team. I like the vocal a lot, and the performance actually appeared great to me. I didn't really notice any issues with this performance personally. The only thing I would say is that Taiga did, at one point when his head was moving like this, he was off sync, but that's it. Like I didn't actually notice any other instances of that happening. And I was thinking as I was watching this, they're actually putting on a good performance. I don't think this was a bad performance. And in my mind at this point, Tomoya is actually a prince maker, because these guys, they're kind of like ranking way low here and not getting cubes, but Tomoya's pulling pretty good performance out of them, and it's Tomoya's perception during practice that's fine-tuned their activities to a point where I had no problems with this performance. But JYP, it was a different issue. He said that when it came to these guys, all three members, they improved their weaknesses, but the sense of unity was disappointing to him. And then he gave a clip, but that clip, I didn't really even notice that it was that bad. And so I really have to sometimes wonder about stuff like that. Is there an agenda to it, or is he actually seeing something? And if I don't see it, then what is actually happening there? Is the clip being a bit nitpicky? Because I think it is. But basically, overall, he says Tomoya's choreo and expression were completely accurate. And, you can actually see, like, when Tomoya's dancing, he has micro movements to his movements that make it look just like going the extra mile. And it's like, if you're doing a body wave, he does it in such a way that it's like, it's three-dimensional. It's not just like from point to point, a sweeping curve that just does one curve. He does it like in a very fancy way, and you can tell that he has a good command of his body. But anyways, JYP continues to say Sean, he's grown in his like control, and then also Taiga, he used to seem heavy, but now he's improved there. But based on that, I would say, based on that feedback, you can tell that JYP's comments are basically saying that Ken's team should win. But at this point, I was thinking Tomoya's team should win, because I had no problem with Tomoya's team's performance, whereas I did have issues with Ken's team's performance. But in the end, the winner was the first team, which is Three Color Dango Heroes. And so, that was surprising to me. They all got cubes. And in a way, this kind of saves Sodai, because Sodai was really far behind before. And I'm still not sure Sodai overcame his issues, because I was still seeing them, or at least the camera was not showing his recovery of those issues properly. So they rank the top 12. I'm not really going to focus too much on it. But mainly, the people who didn't get cubes, extra cubes, were Miraku, Taiga, and Sean. And so, when you look at this roster now, let's go smaller. When you look at this roster, pretty much everybody has 2 cubes, except for Sean and Sodai, who have 1 cube. And I think that Sodai got this cube just now, and Sean got it maybe the last week. And then you have Miraku and Taiga, who don't have 2 cubes. And if you look at the top 12, at the very bottom is Taiga and Sean. And Taiga and Sean were with Tomoya on his team that didn't win. And so, to me, I'm kind of like, are they really just kind of setting up for Taiga and Sean to not make it any further? Because maybe they're already deciding who they want to move forward with. And Miraku is also probably someone they're not going to move forward with. And you kind of identify this early on. But then you're worried about Sodai. And Sodai, I hope that he recovers. Because I don't think that Sodai should be left behind. I feel like technically he's good. And his issue is kind of just like, it's a mental, a reasonable thing that you can just talk to him about. Like, hey, think about what these lyrics mean. And how people would react if they were really feeling that way. But every time you look at them talk about emotional expression, they kind of just give you deliberate actions to take rather than talking about understanding like how humans would act and react in certain situations. But yeah, this is the team. You can see that in the next episode they're going to have Sports Day. And so I think I should kind of check that off on my bingo card here. Sports Day. Guest idol appears. I don't know if we saw that yet. Popular song carries. I feel like a lot of these don't apply. I almost have a bingo here. Matinee, actually older. I don't think they do that in this show. They had a whole team of Matinees, and they were actually the proper ages. And I don't know if anyone really looks younger, except for... Well, Yuki just looks younger, but he is younger. So it's not actually a Matinee, actually older, like situation like Hiroto from Boys Planet. And so, yeah, I noticed that people were discussing a topic that I'll mention at the very end here, which is they want to know who is kind of going to be the ideal leader. And you guys know what I said earlier, is that Tomoya is kind of a prince maker, and I think that that's something that's true on a technical level and also kind of just keeping their spirits up. I think that he is the ideal leader, just from a purely practical standpoint. But a lot of people are identifying other people as leader, like AG, who's like a frontman. But I don't think the center and frontman should be the leader. I don't even know necessarily if it's in them to be a leader in the same sense of like Tomoya. Because you look at Twice, and who's the leader? It's not the oldest, who is Nayeon. It's actually, why am I blanking on her name suddenly? Jiho. And Jiho is like, she's like an ambitious, technically strong performer, technically strong vocal. And I feel like Tomoya kind of fits that, he fits that image. But then Tomoya takes it further, and he's also like pretty good emotional support as well. Whereas Yu is kind of like more kind of like, he's the older guy, but then he's like a paternal kind of mother figure for the guys as well. But I don't know if he's like the one who like is meant to control things technically yet. But who knows? It all depends on who the other team members select and look up to at the end of the day. But I would say that right now it just makes more sense for Tomoya to be the leader. And then I guess that's pretty much it. So, yeah. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you don't like it, give it a thumbs down. Let me know why. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. And then I'll see you in the next video.